California. The forced evolutionary virus started as something good. The scientists at West Tech were trying to cure the new plague that was killing people across America. But when the military got involved, they saw something else: super soldiers. They moved the whole project to Mariposa Military Base and started testing it on prisoners. When Captain Roger Maxon's soldiers found out about the human experiments, they executed the scientists and declared mutiny just 3 days before the bombs dropped. For 25 years, Mariposa sat empty. Then, Richard Gray, a guy exiled from Vault City for murder, decided to explore the base. Bad idea. He fell into one of those FEV vats and spent days floating in the mutagen, his body and mind twisting into something completely different. He came out as the Master, a grotesque blob of flesh with psychic powers and a plan to save humanity by turning everyone into super mutants. But here's the thing that makes this whole story tragic. The Master genuinely thought he was helping. He called his plan the Unity because he believed turning everyone into the same species would end war, racism, and conflict forever. He built an army of super mutants and even created a fake religion called the Children of the Cathedral to lure people into his hospitals where they'd be secretly transported to conversion vats. The Master was incredibly intelligent and had good intentions, but he missed one crucial detail. All his super mutants were sterile. His entire plan to create the future of humanity was biologically impossible from day one. When the Vault Dweller finally confronted him with proof of this in 2161, the Master's mind snapped, and he chose to detonate a nuclear bomb, destroying himself and his cathedral rather than face the reality that his century-long crusade had been pointless. But California's problems with genetic purity fanatics weren't over yet. The Enclave. The Enclave were the deep state made real. A secret cabal of pre-war politicians, military leaders, and corporate executives who had been pulling strings behind the scenes for decades. When the bombs fell, they retreated to an oil rig off the California coast and spent the next 200 years developing the most horrifying plan in Fallout history. See, the Enclave considered themselves the only pure humans left on Earth. Everyone else, Vault Dwellers, ghouls, super mutants, basically everyone who had survived on the surface, were mutants who needed to be eliminated. Their solution was FEV-Curling-13, an airborne bioweapon designed to kill anyone with even trace amounts of radiation exposure. They planned to release it into the jet stream and commit global genocide, leaving only themselves alive to rebuild America in their image. Their ultimate weapon wasn't just the virus. It was Frank Horrigan, a Secret Service agent who got exposed to FEV during excavations at Mariposa. Instead of killing him, they spent 2 years turning him into a cybernetically enhanced super mutant in power armor. The irony is perfect. This pure human organization's greatest champion was himself a mutant, but the brainwashing was so complete that Horrigan never saw the contradiction. The Chosen Ones stopped their plan in 2242 by infiltrating the oil rig and destroying it, but the surviving Enclave members fled east to continue their campaign elsewhere. California's biggest catastrophe wasn't environmental or accidental, it was ideological. Both the Master and the Enclave believed they were saving humanity, but their visions of perfection required murdering everyone who didn't fit their definition of what humans should be. While California dealt with mad scientists and shadow governments, the East Coast faced a different kind of horror. Washington, D.C. The capital wasteland's biggest problem wasn't super mutants or raiders, it was water, or more specifically, what people were willing to do to control it. Project Purity started as a noble dream to clean the Potomac River, but it became a poisoned chalice that attracted the most extreme ideologies in the wasteland. The project began before the war with scientists James and Catherine working to build a massive water purifier at the Jefferson Memorial. After Catherine died in childbirth, James took his baby, the future lone wanderer, and hid in Vault 101 for nearly 20 years. But guilt eventually drove him back to restart the project, setting off a three-way conflict that would determine the capital wasteland's future. The Brotherhood of Steel saw Project Purity as their chance to help people and prove they were more than just technology hoarders. Elder Lyons had already broken with the main Brotherhood by focusing on helping locals instead of just collecting tech and clean water for everyone, fit perfectly with his vision. But the Enclave had followed the Brotherhood east after their defeat in California, and they saw the Purifier as the perfect delivery system for their genocidal plans. President John Henry Eden, actually a computer that had absorbed the personalities of previous presidents, wanted to poison the water with modified FEV that would kill every mutant in the region. His military commander, Colonel Autumn, thought Eden's plan was insane and just wanted to control the water supply to force the wasteland into submission. The real tragedy is that clean water should have been an unqualified good thing. Instead, it became the focal point for a massive battle at the Jefferson Memorial, where the player had to choose between sacrificing themselves to activate the purifier or letting it overload and explode. The Broken Steel DLC fixed this by letting radiation-immune companions like Fox activated instead, but the original ending showed how even the most beneficial technology can become a catalyst for disaster when everyone wants to control it. The Capital Wasteland's Catastrophe proves that in the post-nuclear world, no good deed goes unpunished, and the most valuable resources inevitably become weapons. But if you think fighting over clean water was bad, the next location shows what happens when the environment itself becomes your enemy. Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's problem wasn't radiation or super mutants. It was something called troglodyte degeneration contagion, a disease that turns people into savage creatures called trogs, and the horrible society built around trying to survive it. The disease came from a perfect storm of industrial pollution and nuclear fallout. Pittsburgh's massive steel mills had been pumping toxins into the air for decades, and when that mixed with radioactive fallout, it created TDC, a progressive illness that starts with skin lesions and ends with complete loss of higher brain function. Most victims become trogs, savage creatures that hunt in the ruins of the city. The pit is ruled by Ishmael Ashur, a former Brotherhood of Steel paladin who survived when the Brotherhood cleansed the city years earlier. Ashur rebuilt Pittsburgh as a slave-based industrial operation, using captured wastelanders as disposable labor to work the dangerous steel mills. He justifies this by arguing that slavery is necessary because the environment turns workers into monsters anyway, so why not get some productivity out of them first? Here's where it gets morally complicated. Ashur might actually be right. His daughter Marie was born with natural immunity to TDC, and he believes they can synthesize a cure from her blood. Once they have a cure, he claims he'll end slavery and build a proper civilization. But that requires keeping an infant prisoner as a source of medical research. The player gets dragged into this nightmare by Werner, an escaped slave who wants you to kidnap the baby to spark a slave rebellion. So your choices are, support a slaver who might actually cure the disease and free everyone eventually, or kidnap an innocent child to start a revolution that might just make everything worse. This is why the pit is so brilliantly horrible. There are no good choices. The environment itself forces everyone into moral compromises. Ashur isn't evil because he enjoys slavery. He's evil because he's convinced himself that necessary evils aren't really evil. Werner isn't wrong to want freedom, but his plan requires child kidnapping. Everyone in the pit has been corrupted by the simple necessity of survival in a place that's actively trying to kill them. The pit shows that sometimes the real catastrophe isn't what the bombs destroyed, but what people become when they're forced to choose between different kinds of horror. While Pennsylvania grappled with industrial disease, the next region faced the opposite problem. It was too valuable. Nevada, thanks to Robert House and his defense network, Las Vegas survived the Great War almost intact. House shot down most of the incoming nukes and turned the Strip into a functioning city with electricity, clean water, and actual luxury. The Hoover Dam provided massive amounts of power to the region, making the Mojave the crown jewel of the wasteland. But that success made it a target. By 2281, three major powers were eyeing the Mojave: the new California Republic expanding eastward from California, Caesar's Legion pushing west from Arizona, and Mr. House trying to maintain independence from his casino penthouse. Each faction represented a completely different vision of what post-war America should become. The NCR brought democracy, bureaucracy, and taxes. They wanted to annex the Mojave as another state, offering protection and infrastructure in exchange for political control. But they were stretched thin. Their supply lines were overextended, and many locals saw them as an occupying force that couldn't even protect the territory they claimed. Caesar's Legion offered brutal efficiency through totalitarian slavery. They had conquered 87 tribes and forged them into a disciplined army modeled on ancient Rome. Caesar believed that only through absolute authority and the complete destruction of old world values could humanity build a stable civilization from the wasteland's chaos. Mr. House wanted to maintain the status quo, while pursuing his long-term goal of rebuilding high-tech civilization and eventually colonizing space. He saw both the NCR and Legion as primitive throwbacks who would destroy the very technology needed for humanity's future. The First Battle of Hoover Dam in 2277 was just the opening act. Caesar's forces under Joshua Graham nearly won, but the NCR managed to trap the Legion's elite troops at Boulder City and blow the town up on top of them. Caesar had Graham covered in pitch, set on fire, and thrown into the Grand Canyon as punishment for the defeat. But that was just setting the stage for the real catastrophe, the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, where the courier's choices would determine which ideology would control the most valuable territory in America. The tragedy isn't that one side was clearly evil. It's that each faction had legitimate points and fatal flaws. The NCR's democracy was bogged down in corruption and overextension. The Legion's efficiency came at the cost of basic human rights. House's vision was brilliant but depended on the whims of a single immortal autocrat. The Mojave's catastrophe was being too successful. Its prosperity made it impossible to ignore, and the collision of three mutually exclusive ideologies over its control was always going to end in massive bloodshed. But while Nevada dealt with open warfare between competing empires, the next region faced a more insidious threat: Massachusetts. The institute formed from the survivors of MIT who went underground after the Great War. Initially, they tried to help the surface communities, but growing isolation and a sense of superiority led them to view wastelanders as failed experiments worth only studying and manipulating. Their breakthrough was the development of synthetic humans, Generation 3 synths that were physically indistinguishable from real people. Here's what made the Institute so terrifying. They didn't just create infiltrator robots. They made sure everyone knew about them in the worst possible way. In 2229, a malfunctioning synth called Mr. Carter went on a killing spree in Diamond City's marketplace, revealing the existence of perfect human replicas to the public for the first time. From that moment on, every person in the Commonwealth lived with the knowledge that anyone around them, family, friends, leaders, could secretly be a synthetic spy. The Institute systematically sabotaged every attempt at unified government. When the settlements tried to form the Commonwealth Provisional Government, the Institute replaced one of the delegates with a synth that murdered the other representatives during the meeting. They kidnapped people and replaced them with synthetic doubles programmed to act as spies. They created super mutants from failed FEV experiments and just released them onto the surface when they didn't turn out right. The paranoia they created destroyed the region's only peacekeeping force, the Minutemen, by making it impossible for settlements to trust each other enough to work together. The Quincy massacre that broke the Minutemen happened because a member named Clint became convinced his own organization was compromised and betrayed them to mercenaries. The Institute's real weapon was never their laser rifles or their synth army, it was the idea of synths. The fear that anyone could be an enemy infiltrator shattered trust between communities and prevented any form of stable government from taking root. They created the perfect laboratory conditions by ensuring the surface world remained a chaotic collection of isolated settlements that could be manipulated and observed without interference. The Commonwealth's catastrophe shows how psychological warfare can be more devastating than any bomb. The Institute didn't need to conquer the region through force. They just convinced everyone to tear each other apart through suspicion and fear. While Massachusetts dealt with enemies that looked exactly like friends, the next location faced a more elemental horror: Maine. The island is split between three factions that can't coexist. The Harbormen are the original human inhabitants, barely surviving in their town behind fog condensers that keep the mist and its monsters at bay. They're insular, suspicious, and increasingly desperate as the fog slowly wins the war of attrition. The Children of Adam are radiation-worshipping cultists who see the fog as a divine manifestation of their god. They've set up in a nuclear submarine called the Nucleus and view the Harbormen's fog condensers as blasphemous interference with Adam's will. They want nothing more than to destroy the condensers and let the fog consume everything. Acadia is a refuge for escaped Institute synths, led by Dime, a prototype synth who's been hiding on the island for over a century. Dime tries to maintain peace between the other two factions, but his methods reveal the true catastrophe of Far Harbor. Dima murdered Captain Avery, the leader of Far Harbor, and replaced her with a synth programmed to be friendly toward Acadia. To deal with his guilt, he surgically removed the memory of the murder and hid it in a computer simulation. He also replaced the extremist leader of the Children of Adam with a more moderate synth to prevent them from destroying the fog condensers. The fog doesn't just create dangerous creatures, it creates moral corruption. The constant pressure of survival in an environment that's actively trying to kill you forces everyone into extreme positions. The Harbormen become xenophobic isolationists. The Children of Adam embrace suicidal fanaticism. Even Dime, who genuinely wants peace, resorts to murder and mind control to achieve it. When the sole survivor arrives, they have to decide between several catastrophic options: expose Dima's crimes and start a war, use the nuclear launch key to grant the children their great division by destroying them, disable the fog condensers and doom Far Harbor to the creatures, or perpetuate Dime's cycle of lies and murder by helping him maintain his false peace. Far Harbor's catastrophe is environmental in the most literal sense. The fog is the environment, and it makes moral clarity impossible. It's a physical manifestation of the fog of war that obscures right and wrong and forces everyone into monstrous choices. The real disaster isn't any single faction, but the way the oppressive environment guarantees that everyone becomes corrupted just by trying to survive. But while Far Harbor dealt with environmental horror, Our final location shows what happens when greed itself becomes a weapon. The Sierra Madre. Hidden in the Mojave Desert, the Sierra Madre Casino promised to be a city of gold, but it turned out to be the most elaborate and deadly trap in the entire Fallout universe. The catastrophe here isn't political or environmental, it's purely psychological, and it proves that sometimes the deadliest enemy is your own inability to let go. The casino was built by Frederick Sinclair, a pre-war billionaire who wanted to create the perfect sanctuary for his love affair with starlet Vera Keyes. To make his dream real, he struck a deal with the scientists at Big MT Research Facility, trading advanced holographic and matter replication technology for the right to use the surrounding villa as a testing ground. Big MT's experiment was the Cloud, a toxic, self-replicating red mist designed as an area denial weapon. They gave the construction workers experimental hazmat suits that were deliberately flawed. The Cloud corroded the seals shut, permanently trapping the workers inside. Over 200 years, they mutated into the Ghost People, immortal, unkillable creatures wandering the villa in a state of eternal, silent agony. The Cloud is more than just a weapon. It's a physical metaphor for the casino's theme of being unable to let go. It clings to everything, preserving the villa in perfect decay, refusing to dissipate, just like the obsessions that drove everyone connected to the Sierra Madre to their doom. Sinclair couldn't let go of his love for Vera. Dean Domino couldn't let go of his pre-war jealousy of Sinclair's success. Christine couldn't let go of her hunt for the rogue Elder Elijah. And Elijah couldn't let go of his obsession with using old-world technology to wipe the slate clean and start over. The player gets lured into this trap by Elijah, who wants to break into the casino's vault not for treasure, but to weaponize the Cloud and unleash it on the entire Mojave. The whole Dead Money DLC is structured like an addiction metaphor. You're literally fitted with an explosive collar that will kill you if you try to leave, forced to work with 3 other collared companions who are all trapped by their own obsessions. The ultimate test comes in the vault itself, where you find 37 solid gold bars worth a fortune. But taking them over-encumbers you so much that escaping the collapsing casino becomes nearly impossible. The game forces you to choose between literal treasure and your life, and the hardest part is that letting go of the gold feels like failure, even when it's the smart choice. The Sierra Madre's Catastrophe teaches the wasteland's most brutal lesson. Some prizes aren't meant to be claimed, and the beginning can't happen until you let go of the end. It's a perfect distillation of everything wrong with the old world: the greed, the obsession with technology as a solution to human problems, and the inability to accept that some things are just over. If you enjoyed this vid and want to see every Fallout serial killer explained, click the video on the screen.